1995. You know how nowadays we don't walk to the bank anymore? Or we don't walk to the college loan store where they sell debt? Or walk to the Apple store to shoot pumpkins out of a cannon and get a coupon for the local apple cider that they get from the tree? And instead, you have to purchase a rectangle and then identify the traffic lights, but sometimes the very corner of the traffic light is touching the very edge of the square, but when you click the square, it zooms in a little bit, so the traffic light is not in the square anymore, but it still might be, therefore making it entirely up to the robot you are using to determine if you are or are not a robot instead of you by no fault of your own, and how there are precautionary measures to be taken should you forget the login information because you haven't ordered the apple cider since literally a year ago, and how it includes questions like, in what town were you born, or what elementary school did you go to, or who is your mother's favorite child? Well, one of the questions that is always on that list is, what is your favorite animal? And this is where it all starts, because a lot of people nowadays are probably going to sit there and put axolotl or blobfish trying to be cute, but there is likely not an insignificant population that might not even answer the question with a kind of animal. They might put a name in there, the name of their best friend. There are a lot of perspectives to have when discussing our best friends, but the thing I want to interrogate in particular is why we are connected to them, the ways in which we see ourselves in them and them in us. Why the cowboys who refuse to come out of the closet will stand there pointing at a mountain and say, "That's a dog." No, it's not. It's a mountain, silly. 20,000 years ago, some Siberian mutt stood there and noticed how these dirty, unshowered humans kept showing up with extra food and started following them around. And then, I bet the humans were like, "Look, that dog is following me and wants to hunt too. I'm naming him Vlad." 20,000 years later, and this relationship has become so parasocially intertwined that the entire lexicon and framework by which we perceive the very nature of what it means to be a dog has evolved to the point where the dog as an identity has an extreme amount of nuance and variety because of their direct relationship with us for 20,000 years. The literary and socio-political humors of the dog could be its own YouTube channel. But this is the 1995 Project, and the 3 movies that the random number generator told me to connect are going to put you on a fascinating journey through the topic.
Chuck Norris is Lieutenant Jake Wilder. When it comes to fighting crime, he's not clowning around.
You're under arrest, bozo.
But now, he's about to face the toughest, the most difficult, the most impossible challenge of his life. His new partner.
Her? No. Him. Wait a minute. What makes you think I'm gonna work with a mutt?
Fasten your seatbelts as law enforcement gets a whole new look.
This is your new home, so don't mess it up.
And it's not pretty. 2 cops. One's tough.
You could help.
One's smart.
That dog's a hero, you know.
Yeah, so I've been told.
One has style. The other
Good.
has taste.
You've got an attitude problem.
One's doing all the work. and his partner is getting all the credit.
Man, that dog is some kind of hero, you know that?
Yeah, so I've been told more than once.
Coming soon to theaters everywhere, police work is going to the dogs. Top Dog.
No doubt about it. You boys are made for each other.
You don't even look like a police dog.
Okay, so Top Dog is a bland movie that doesn't matter, and it's probably more well known amongst the cinematic academics for being a movie that got extra negative reviews because it's a movie about neo-Nazis planning a city bombing, and it was released 9 days after the Oklahoma City bombing. Yeah, this movie was some passion project encouraged by Chuck Norris's snot-nosed little brother Aaron. When I watched this movie, it inspired immense apathy. Sure, Chuck and the dog were punching and kicking and detectiving the Nazis, but it was done so boringly. Like, the point of this kind of movie is to take advantage of the chemistry between the actor and the dog, and it did not work for Chuck Norris because Chuck Norris cannot act. And no, I'm not afraid to slander the man because I know who Rare Akuma is and can call upon Rare Akuma if I run into trouble. You see, the whole point of the man's best friend movie, heck, the whole point of the trope in the American context is to capitalize on one of the very few ways the Americanized paternalist alpha male is permitted to express tenderness through their relationship with their dog. And yes, Chuck Norris takes care of the dog, and they have goofball moments of banter, but there is no danger or stakes because Chuck Norris and the doggy are so effortlessly successful in their investigation. Not a single heartstring was tugged upon my viewing, and this fact exposes an ominous truth about the trajectory of action movie masculinity as depicted by Hollywood. Well, maybe it's more a writing trap that happens in action movies than a trend, but basically Chuck Norris has become so tough and so allegedly cool that he cannot have a single adorable moment with the dog. It's a 20,000-year relationship. It should be easy. And there is no way you're able to blame the dog's acting because, excuse you, Betty is the rising young actress who played Ruff in the 1993 adaptation of Dennis the Menace, also starring Natasha friggin' Lyonne. Not only that, Betty had puppies earlier that year, and one of her puppy feeders would keep drooping into the shot, so they had to just keep taping it to her body every time it started hanging. Yes, she needed minor surgery, but in this economy, Betty is a real professional. They're lucky she didn't sue. Oh, and shout-outs to Digby. I saw you putting that Technicolor Dreamcoat experience to work. So no, it's not the dog. Chuck sucks. He's a terrible scene partner. And it's because, at this point, the American entertainment industry had already capitalized on the rugged masculine iconography of Chuck Norris to the point where he is not capable of having a partner, because partnership implies equality. And this man, who had literally karate chopped his way through the utter wasteland of capitalist excess known as the American 1980s, no longer has the capacity to express an innocent, dog-enjoying sentimentality on screen. He's Zeusified. And do you think Zeus gives a crap about your dog? No, he doesn't. He's a Texas Ranger now. No time for dogs. Well, actually there is. But wait. Before we get to that, I'm gonna add some ethos to my assessment that Chuck sucks in his kid brother's movie. This is what movie critic Mal Vincent said in the Virginian Pilot, quote, It is amazing that Chuck Norris has made this many movies without improving as an actor. Why does he turn into cardboard whenever a camera is pointed in his direction? If they could capture the real Chuck Norris on film, things would be different. Unquote. And Alamar Halfledassin of the Big British Conundrum said, quote, Norris thankfully puts on a better display than in Sidekicks. It couldn't have been worse there. But try as he might, he's not suited to comedy or family fun. Unquote. Michael Sauter from Entertainment Weekly, quote, released theatrically right after the Oklahoma City tragedy, Top Dog can now be seen on its own terms, and it emerges as, well, a total woofer. D. Unquote. Okay, so from a pure detached movie critic standpoint, this film is at best painfully bizarre and at worst nothing special at all. But hey, this video is supposed to be about more than that. It's about man and man's best friend and the relationship between them on screen. So now I have to sit here and provide a critical analysis for Top Dog that the film entirely does not deserve, and using this chosen lens, the film is even more confusing, but also darkly revealing of a central propagandist paradox that plagues the American consciousness, in particular regarding how racism operates. The kinds of white people who would be mad at me for bringing this up are already mad at me for reading books in general, but the villains of the film are literal violent neo-Nazis, so it would be a disservice to my analysis to not bring race up, and I have a feeling this will get really deep in a scary way, but don't worry, we will come out of the other side of the movie actually feeling good, I promise. Okay, stick with me, you might learn something, okay? Let's talk about it. When considering the relationship between man and dog, one must acknowledge the nature of said relationship as one of symbiotic service. For example, I provide food, you provide herding sheep. And because this film is about a policeman and his dog fighting neo-Nazis, it seems a tad paradoxical, because from a historical standpoint, the oldest version of the police dog was, the Cuban bloodhound. And what were they bred and trained to do? Hunt, capture, and kill enslaved black people. Wade in the water, children, go where the dogs can't smell ya. The French plantations in the Caribbean were particularly egregious in this manner because those oppressors would just sit there and starve their dogs on purpose to make them traumatically hangry, and then they would feed them the body parts of the enslaved black people to send a message, don't get any ideas. Even in the 1960s, which my still alive grandparents were alive for, the cops would be like, oh, the black people are protesting in the street? Go get 'em, Fido! So yeah, thanks for the advice, Scruff McGruff, but I know what your grandpa did last summer. And with documented cases of the KKK and neo-Nazis having direct links with police departments as late as freaking 2014, this movie doesn't make any sense from the perspective of any historically oppressed American whatsoever. Like, the American police force represents a unique and lethal trifecta of a fraternity, a death cult, and a thankless dead-end job. Like, you're telling me Cops is one of the longest-running television shows of all time, and that it totally hasn't inspired people to join the force because they want a legal way to satiate their violence fetish? I wonder what their romantic partners have to say about that. Whatever, this is becoming a different video. Reel it in. Lack of depth, nuance, and truth about the PD is rampant, and by design because they are government representatives, and all governments are incentivized to control the people as their bottom line, and politics is arguing about what that control ought to look like, and the law enforcement officer is the arm of that control by definition. It is literally their job to oppress, and it is disingenuous to suggest otherwise. If cops actually were upstanding defenders of American freedoms like Top Dog would want want you to believe, then the cops on cops would be hunting neo-Nazis and not the people that a fascist regime would believe are the disposable dregs of society. I mean, you can sometimes tell how racist a person is or isn't by how their dog treats non-white people. Dogs are smart, and they are a reflection of their owners, and they're not good at lying. If you were to ask any left-leaning black academic to look into Top Dog, they would rightfully say, you lost me at Chuck Norris, because Chuck Norris is a vehicle and perpetrator of the law enforcement lie. Like any God-fearing white passing American, he believes it. Why'd I say passing? His first name is Carlos, bro. That said, Top Dog is an interesting case, okay? Because in the context of the mid-90s, this movie was seen as narratively distasteful because it's supposed to be a family fun movie, with the villains being literal neo-Nazis, and egad, what parent would want to explain that to their sweet, innocent child? But remember, this was just a fun little throwaway movie that the dude made with his kid brother. And while I would be overjoyed for Chuck Norris to understand the nuances of the intentionally propagandistic media ecosystem, it was very much his intention to explicitly and deliberately make Nazis the bad guys in his movie. And what is truly frightening is how the conservatives of today are so focused on clout that they are too slimy and spineless to say Nazis are terrible. In summary, if you cannot train your dog to be not racist because you are a racist but you're working on it, you should at least train them to fight Nazis. Which is paradoxical, but if Chuck Norris can achieve that dissonance, so can you. And from all of my rudimentary research on Top Dog, the process of shooting the film was entirely enjoyable and fun for everyone involved. And I do like that about it quite a lot. They loved the dog. They would invite the community to watch them explode cars in the street. And it's nice to read about positive on-set environments, because we often sensationalize the bad ones. Oh man, I'm rambling real hard, oh man. But the fact that I did kind of proves my original point. The dog is an entry point to almost any kind of conversation or lecture you can think of, because the human relationship with dogs is so connected, and animal husbandry is one of the foundational building blocks of human civilization itself. The movie just happened to be about Nazis and cop dogs, so don't blame me for having thoughts, okay? I mean, the relationship is so deep that one of the most well-known and internationally recognized mystical creatures is quite literally a human and a dog at the same time.
Somewhere under this parched desert, a secret lies buried.
Hey, I got something here. Do you believe in werewolves?
No. What the hell?
It could be the discovery of the sanctuary.
Come on in, we're expecting you.
A secret so dark, you could never believe it. Until it happens to you.
There's some weird things happening around here.
It's like a nightmare. It was a nightmare. Ellie, I'm scared. I want to know what happened to him.
When the rising moon fans the flames of desire, the beast emerges, and no one is safe. Can you keep a secret? Werewolf. From Aphex Entertainment. Rated R.
Okay, so Arizona Werewolf is one of those movies that is so famously bad that it has a cult status for being bad. The frame of reference for a majority of people in this instance is that it is the subject of one of the most well-known Mystery Science Theater 3000 episodes. And you see, that puts me in a weird position review-wise, because a lot of the perception is tainted by that lens, to the point where folks will show up on Letterboxd and give it half a star, citing Mystery Science, and I have to hunt for the ones who aren't cowards and saw it raw, like I did. Now, This is a bad werewolf movie, and bad werewolf movies are a dime a dozen, and there's so many bad ones that it makes one wonder why it's so difficult to get it right. Maybe it's a blood-pact situation, where in order to balance the scales of quality, one must exchange 50 bad werewolf movies for one very good one, or something. I don't know, I'm not a cryptozoologist. Maybe it has to do with an over-association with praise for masculine beastly violence in a patriarchally driven society that makes it hard to tell the werewolf story? Like, we've already trained ourselves to expect desirable manhood to be represented by loose cannon beast-like behavior. We already expect men to be health-regenerating hairy brutes. I mean, look at who I just talked about. Chuck Norris is already a werewolf. Every beefcake action hero is already a werewolf as far as the American understanding is concerned. Honestly, werewolf movies would work great as erotic thrillers, but the only special effects that erotic thriller people are aware of are the various human skin circles that produce milk. Like, the only 90s filmmaker off the top of my head who dips his finger in both the supernatural and erotic lanes is Fred Olen Ray, and his modus operandi is lazily easy and incredibly cheap. Have you noticed how much I haven't talked about this movie yet? Yeah, I am not in a rush to talk about this movie. Cause, Arizona Werewolf is flatter than a Coca-Cola you left outside for 5 hours on accident at one of your acquaintance's 5th grade birthday/pool parties. Like, there are just so many dumb, half-conversation, half-arguments about what to do about the werewolf. Like, one of these conversations happens in a room, and then a werewolf incident happens, and then the same characters decide to have essentially the same long, stupid conversation they just had in the same room. It's not good, amigos. It is not good. The werewolf is not even that strong or powerful, and that would have been interesting if that were a deliberate choice and not an inherent failing. All that said, I did like the final sequence of this movie. It's like they suddenly remembered that film is a creative medium and the cinematographer started trying to do interesting things, and it starts genuinely examining the things that werewolves are supposed to demonstrate, like the internal loss of control to the beast and spreading that to the person you love most, and now you both have this thing that happens now, and like, where was that movie for the whole movie? The movie literally should have started there, dude. All this random rambling about Navajo artifacts, stop it! So yeah, the difficulty of the werewolf movie is a consequence of the learned masculine desires and expectations we've societally inflicted on ourselves. What would a boy version of The Substance look like? It looks like a werewolf movie. And to the folks who are like, no, it looks like 28 years later, I say, you're not thinking hard enough about that movie, because it places the ambiguously problematic masculinity into a coming-of-age narrative. And that's about gaining control of the self, and has an implied, but these risks are worth it narrative. The boys need to allow themselves to lose their fictional autonomy just like the girls. I mean, Wolfman's a step in the right direction. Come on, more of that. Let's perfect it, people. Now, I know you're like, what do you mean every action hero is already a werewolf? Can you elaborate on that? My friends, that is where the final randomly chosen film comes in. Here is where we transition from the uncontrollable transformation into the dog to the fully human nature of, having that dog in ya.
Entertainment. Armand Assante stars in the classic story of courage and adventure. Kidnapped, premiering November 5th on the BAM Sunday Night Movie Event.
Okay, so Kidnapped is a movie adaptation of an 1893 book written by Scottish author Robbie Louis Stevenson. You know, one of the guys who's responsible for breaking away from the Victorian didactic writing style, instead treating the art form as an exercise in human imagination, which is pretty punk rock if I don't say so myself. I mean, this is the bloke responsible for Treasure Island and Jekyll and Hyde. Did we just fall into a rabbit hole? Let's dig ourselves out. Okay, so this TV movie was a 2-part Freeform original, or, well, Hallmark original. Yes, that Hallmark, and it was produced by Francis Ford Coppola. Yes, that Francis Ford Coppola. And this was a location shoot. They went to Scotland for this, bro, which is incredible and ambitious for a Hallmark TV movie. Like, bro, Hallmark, what happened?
Gary? I thought what we had was special!
Anyways, it aired on the Freeform channel back when it was called the Family Channel.
Family. One channel celebrates its extraordinary power.
And as far as the plot itself is concerned, well, the extended trailer for it goes through the entire plot, and it's quite hilarious to me specifically how long it is. In fact, I'm tempted to just plop the entire thing right into this.
From Robert Louis Stevenson, one of the greatest storytellers of all time, comes a tale of adventure. Producer Francis Ford Coppola and Hallmark Entertainment present Kidnapped, a world premiere miniseries starring Armand Assante. This is a story of the Highlands of Scotland in the year 1751, and of Alan Breck Stewart, a Scottish patriot fighting to free his homeland from English occupation.
You say King George is not at work?
It had been 5 hard years since the daring young Scottish Prince Charles had lost his attempt to seize the English throne.
Can't fight them with sword and pistol.
Well, you cannot fight him with parchment and pen.
The Redcoat Army of England's King George hunted down the last of the rebel resistors, the loyal followers of the young prince, known as Jacobites.
Be alert, men. These Highlanders are full of tricks.
The fierce Highland Scots were fighting against the powerful lowland followers of King George.
No, our policy is to drive them off the land. Oh, it's a policy to burn them off the land.
Brian McCarty co-stars as David Balfour. He began with nothing and found himself an heir to a family fortune. But David's uncle will stop at nothing to keep the fortune for himself. He kidnaps his own nephew, imprisoning him aboard a ship bound for the American colonies.
Get 60 guineas for you.
They're going to sell me into slavery.
A chance meeting on the high seas brings together 2 unlikely allies. Alan Breck Stewart, a rebel on the run, carrying a fortune in gold for Bonnie Prince Charlie, exiled in France.
So you're a Jacobite?
Aye. And you, by your long face, should be for King George.
And David Balfour, caught in the crossfire.
Davy, my man, that wild Highlander is a danger to the ship.
They had no one to depend on but each other.
Would you stand with me?
I will.
They'd end up fighting for their lives. Guarding a king's ransom for their exiled prince.
That's for the true king of this country.
I will look after your gold as if it were my own.
The fate of a kingdom was in their hands. Before these 2 were through, they would take on an empire.
Let's have your name.
Your name! Breck! Alan Breck!
And now, a major television event for the whole family. Armand Assante and Brian McCarty in Robert Louis Stevenson's Kidnapped. Next.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. There isn't a dog anywhere in that trailer, and this video is supposed to be about dogs, dude. Why are we talking about this? Has the random number generator defeated you? And to that I say, remember what I said earlier about the ancient curse of patriarchal expectation, and about how every action hero is already expected to be a werewolf? Well, that also applies here. Let's expand on the concept a little bit. One undeniably central piece to the masculine American identity is an attraction to rugged individualism, and it infiltrates pretty much every art form that involves men or boys yet to become men over time. Okay, so you know how if you were a public school kid, you probably read stuff like The Outsiders or Cuckoo's Nest, or if your teacher thought they were not like the other girls, The Catcher in the Rye? Just manly coming-of-age wolf pack and rugged individualism stuff, Manifest Destiny stuff, Boston Tea Party stuff, or if you were skipping school and reading comic books with Wolverine in them while listening to Snoop Dogg or DMX or Little Bow Wow. Why did we hunt the wolves into near extinction? Because we saw them as worthy adversaries. The dog is the American dream personified for the mainstream man because... Do I really have to bring that weird movie into this? I guess I have to show a clip from 2016's Gene.
The strength of the pack is the wolf. The strength of the wolf is the pack. The strength of the pack is the wolf. The strength of the wolf is the pack.
I mean, is that or is that not the crystallized characterization of patriarchy? I don't just break the norms. Me and the wolf pack are gonna establish our own norms because that's how free we are. It really is no secret that CEOs and people in power have secret informal meetings in third spaces where they wink and say, let's talk man to man, and play poker in a cigar lounge or in a casino or at a strip club. There is literally one of these kinds of scenes in F1, a movie from this year, but it's initiated by the lady supporting character, which is emasculating in a good way because it demonstrates that men aren't really the dogs they want to be and are actually puppies herded by women, but I'm getting ahead of myself. This painting that haunts us to this day is an ad for a cigar company. Look it up. And this goes back to my original thesis, that our history and affinity with dogs is so ingrained that they've become our mirror in ways that are good and bad as well. I mean, at the very least, we've attached them to revolutionary freedom, particularly when targeting our heteronormative boys to turn them into heteronormative men, and this is a carefully guarded and cherished form of power too, and circa 1995, it definitely was, because the second you bring women into the conversation and discuss women aspiring to this dog-like freedom and resistance stuff, all of a sudden, it's an anomaly, and said ladies are relegated to either being labeled a bitch or being labeled a butch. Yes, there are successful and undeservedly unsuccessful films, even in 1995, that challenge this normative pattern and toxic labeling, but God forbid it becomes a norm, not in my patriarchy. Now, I can definitely elaborate on that point and probably will in different formats in future videos, but the random number generator gave me Chuck Norris and popularized late 1800s literature, okay? I have to work with what I got. Just know that the girly version of this video and topic would have been me doing a lot of specific and spicy complaining about how male screenwriters characterize lesbian identity. But yeah, what I'm talking about spans the political spectrum too. Even the propaganda movies show loose cannons and lone wolves doing whatever it takes for the pack. Every man wants to be an alpha, or at least that's the core pseudoscience that American society is telling us. It's what stories like Kidnapped established. It's the whole point of Chuck Norris, and it's why werewolf movies are so hard to do properly, because we're afraid to punch up in that way and describe dog-like male animalism as potentially harmful or destructive. Okay? Okay? What a journey. Here are the 3 movies I discussed and where they sit on the current list of rankings. Yeah, I have no idea what this next video will be about, but I'm sure it'll be something cool. That random number generator sure knows how to pick 'em. So I guess that's that. Until next time. Oh, and subscribe. I forgot to ask in the middle.
Going on.
Werewolf! Oh no, save me!